What's up, everyone? Welcome to my corner of the internet. I'm your host, Ryan Kramer, and this is Crossover Commerce, presented by Ping Pong Payments, the leading global payments provider helping sellers keep more of their hard-earned money. What's up, everyone? Ryan Kramer with Ping Pong Payments and Crossover Commerce. You did it. You made it to Friday, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this live session of our show, Crossover Commerce, episode 34. We're already breezing through season 2 of this show. This week has just been really exciting in terms of people and content being shared on the show. And if this is your first time, welcome. You're now a friend of the show. We are excited to drop some bits of knowledge in both the Amazon and e-commerce industry, whether it's shipping, logistics, product selection. If you just have general questions, go ahead and send those in the comments below. We'll see those real time. And Jason and I, our guests, which I alluded to in kind of their teaser a little bit, we'll be answering those live that you have about either selling or just some of the topics that we have coming up. But I'm super excited about our guest today, Jason Hanan of AZ Seller Kit, he was a co-founder as well as a 7-figure seller managing all sorts of storefronts, being successful on Amazon. He developed a really cool software and technology to help Amazon sellers kind of elevate the game even further. He saw the need, they grew it, they developed it themselves, and now they're helping other Amazon sellers kind of with the same thing. But we're talking about automated pricing and inventory levels. And a lot of people just don't think about that concept of how do I manage the two if I'm low on inventory, which we saw a lot of Amazon sellers have this year, or I should say 2020. It still feels like 2020 out there, but a lot of sellers this year had those problems with managing the revenue aspect as well as the inventory aspect side of things. So their solution is really cool to learn about. I'm excited to bring him on today. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for doing this. This is super cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope hopefully that intro was justice, because you've been around a little while selling both Amazon seller as an Amazon seller, but also just in the community on e-commerce. So for those of people who don't know who your background is or who you are exactly, why don't you give us a quick intro of yourself?
No, sure. First, that was a great job of doing it. You did it very well, almost better than me. So
it's what I do. After 34 times, I feel like I've gotten the intro part. Sometimes I just have to remember to unmute myself, or hey, what company am I talking about? Everyone has AMZ or AZ or something like that in their titles, so got to get that right all the time.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. After you said, I was like, oh, I'm going home. It's done. Good job.
I appreciate it.
But so my background is actually I'm a retailer first. I grew up and we owned retail stores that actually sold CDs and DVDs in Manhattan. We had 3 stores called Entertainment Outlet back in the day. So my background has always been retail, and ultimately, Amazon is direct to consumer and it is retail. And over the years, we moved into Amazon, originally selling DVDs, believe it or not, and obviously at a certain point that world sort of came to an end, and we transitioned into becoming Amazon private label sellers and helping other private label sellers manage their business once we saw that there was a need for that in the marketplace. And part of managing business has always been data and software, and we've really noticed the need for software to help manage pricing. When you try and do it manually, which you should be doing, it's obviously very time consuming and very challenging. But the ability that we give the customers to automate pricing to try and find where that sweet spot is of profitability is definitely something that has been eye-opening, especially in 2020 as inventory levels have been scarce, and as retailers across the country were closed down. The price elasticity on certain items were really pretty surprising. Things that were selling for $19.99 2 months earlier, people were able to get $39.99, $49.99 for the same item. And it really was the software that gave them the confidence to try and push their pricing, a little bit higher. And, before you know it, you have, certain exercise items that are now selling for $40 that were selling for 20 before, because at-home exercise became a crazy thing. But that across the board, just realizing that there's going to be spikes in demands at different times on Amazon, and having a software that can catch those spikes in demand, while you're sleeping, so to say, has made a lot of our clients much more profitable than they would have been if they just let their items sell out at their original price point.
Right, and that philosophy obviously makes sense. I think when it's almost the traditional supply and demand, correct? It's if your good is people are buying at such a high velocity, but the but the supply is low, you can obviously increase that pricing. So that the philosophy and model is kind of the basis for this tool. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean that is there's really two sides of the tool. That is definitely the supply and demand aspect of it, which was super important in 2020 because Amazon's warehouse weren't fulfilling, stuff that was coming in from China wasn't landing on time. So there was a scarcity of product on the marketplace. There's another side of it where you really are able to, if you have unlimited inventory, you're able to allow the software to look at your price points and based on your velocity, find the most profitable price that that your item can support, based on just overall velocity, as opposed to looking at your inventory if it's dwindling. So the beauty of the software really is that if you have, let's say 50% of your items where you don't have inventory issues, you can use that profit optimization tool, and the other half of your catalog, which you usually find where there are inventory issues, you can use the inventory-based solution for pricing. And it's always fun when we link an account and they tell me over the phone, no inventory issues, we're fine. And then you link the account. What about these, 40 items that are out of stock? They're like, no, that was an exception. What about these? It's an exception. No, that doesn't. The data doesn't lie, and it's just never really makes sense to sell out of an item if you don't have more inventory behind it.
Yeah, I all that also reminds me of. When you think about, you said you came from like the retail side of business before you jumped into Amazon. It's almost like the clearance mentality of when things just need to move in terms of making space for more, or in terms of, hey, it's not selling, we need to get rid of it anyways. It's just sitting there, it's accruing shelf life, or it's accruing fees in Amazon space. This model actually can help you save on those kinds of fees, and just if you just need to get rid of that product inventory to make way for, obviously, so it just doesn't sit there. That makes that sense. So that's why I initially think about when you're like, hey, we need to get this inventory moving. So that's curious. So why? I guess what was the story or like the solution that kind of brought you guys to bring about this kind of like technology? Like, what was that problem that you guys saw as sellers, and then you kind of said we need to do something better with this to forecast?
So when we were working actually with we're like serial software buyers. Like we really kind of gone through every software on the market over the years because we're big believers that software has solutions, and we really started to realize that from a repricing standpoint, this idea of repricing for people with competition was all over the place. Sell for 1 penny below and all of that stuff. That was really, all over the market. But an inventory-based solution for private label sellers really did not exist. So there's, one other company that really does it, which is, Feedvisor. They're, super expensive, and they really seem to be focused on the, top, 200-300 sellers that are out there that can afford to pay their fees. And we really felt like, us, were not necessarily able to spend the money that they wanted to charge, but still had a need for the solutions that were out there. So we really set off on a goal to try and do what they're not doing, which is, serve a little bit of the rest of the Amazon community, and also to do things a little bit differently, where we have inventory-based solutions, and they really are more with this mindset of just profit optimization. So, when seeing that out there, we really just started to understand that if you're not looking at your inventory levels when you're making pricing decisions, you're just missing half the picture. and that really does not, does not exist on the marketplace, as crazy as that may sound. And we have a lot of people that leave from, other softwares that land that by us, and they come to us originally because our price is better, but they start to realize that it really is a better solution ultimately because we're sellers first, we're retailers first. So we need solutions that work for our business, and that always translates, better when you're actually doing it yourself as opposed to just selling software.
Yeah, that all is fantastic in that capacity. And when you're talking about being a seller first in that mentality, you clearly want to be you want to do everything that can maximize profitability. And I think that's what's really cool about that is that this formula is kind of a moving needle, right? There's no guaranteed formula. It's always going to depend each on a seller's either product or their category that they're in. So is that something that you have gained insight on, that you're starting to see, hey, now that we were good in this one area, but with our software, we were able to see, hey, in these different categories, you can start to see trends even better, or even with 2020 being its own kind of spectacle, if you will, you got to see certain categories really take off. Like you said, home equipment alluded to earlier. Is that kind of almost a market insight and maybe an opportunity for sellers, maybe going forward on your guys's, maybe after looking at all the data?
Yeah, I guess I'll say that we are, we definitely, see trends be, probably a little bit faster than other people because we have, more data just with all the, account information that's there. And I think one of the main trends that we actually saw in 2020 that was a little bit, I guess, elevated over 2019 was the ad spend and price relationship. It does seem that over 2020, if you spend more on advertising and then raise your prices, there seems to be less price sensitivity and more of a need to actually pour money into advertising. So if you're not an old model and sort of what we used to try and do, 2018, 2019, was trying to figure out when to stop your ad spend so that the item can be profitable or when to slow it down. And what we've realized more in 2020 is that the trick really is about raising your ad spend and then raising your price. Because if there are more eyeballs on the item and you've got more reviews and the item is building, it pretty much creates this upward spiral where you're able to spend more money and raise your price so that you're still profitable. And the goal is actually to see, your perfect world, your item costs you $1 and you can sell it for $100 and you're spending $50 on advertising. But the goal is really to try and find those items where you can continue to pour money into the ad spend, and the customer is still willing to buy it at that higher price. And when
Absolutely.
When you can find that, there's a lot of diamonds in the rough that tend to the customer really will tell you what they're willing to spend money on. And when you have software trying things out, it really does, it lights up very quickly on your dashboard, the items that are working and the items that are profitable. And, it really is about just continuing to funnel ad spend into the items that are working.
Absolutely. And I'll go ahead and throw up some comments real quick. So Raja from Ecom Managers over in Pakistan, obviously saying hi. Hi, Raja, friend of the show, obviously. And both our collective friend, Mr. David Dayan from Amazon Experts in the Ecom Cooperative. What's up, David? Thanks for watching us today. Again, everyone, if you're listening to us and you have questions about Jason or just that philosophy or myself for the show, if I know this is early on West Coast, but if you save this for later and you have a thought and you're listening to this on this beautiful gloomy gray Friday outside my window, it's if you have questions for us, go ahead and add those in the comments below. We also have, if you have questions about ping pong or Jason, those links will also be about with our companies are below too, with ping pong obviously signing for free and saving money, but also Jason and his team to learn out more about their company. It's in those comments and descriptions on both the YouTube and Facebook posts, as well as LinkedIn posts below. So definitely go check those out after the show. But if you have questions in real time, we will see those, throw them up on the screen. We will interact with you, the audience, as well. So Jason, my questions I initially started thinking about is why did this kind of like space not get figured out? Because it seems like this is like retail kind of business philosophy that you guys are kind of shedding a light on. Why wasn't there a solution that you think that either Amazon didn't either share that data or allow them to kind of like help sellers out, or you think another tool didn't kind of like step in and solve this problem quicker than what you guys did?
Yeah, be honest with you, it boggles my mind. And when we started, and my partner Lenny Ash, who been working with whatever since 1996, is definitely the smarter of the two of us, and is the software guy and the brains. And he was always telling me and always pushing me to say that, you know, like, we can actually do this and sell this. And I was always hesitant, and I was, you know, I can't count the amount of times I've told him that we don't sell software, we're Amazon sellers. We don't sell software, we're Amazon sellers. And once we finally cracked the code of how to actually do this, and we waited a year of doing it on all of our own accounts before we even considered bringing it to market. Because I was just very concerned. I was like, this is pricing, this is very sensitive, like, you cannot mess this up. So, you know, we have to see it through every season. And we really just, you know, he finally convinced me that this is actually something that we should make, you know, try and sell. And it really, because it didn't exist on the market, it definitely made me a little hesitant of like, why aren't other people doing it this way? But, you know, at the end of the day, I think that there's been a lack of, you know, focus from the software community on the private label seller, because I think that that's relatively new, you know, where it really did take off, you know, 2018, 2019. And there's been, you know, a ton of focus really more on the, you know, the retail arbitrage type seller, the wholesale type seller that was, you know, buying and tagging onto listings. And this sort of, you know, idea of private label sellers now dominating, you know, Amazon. It really used to be very much selling, the big wholesalers would sell their product to Amazon, and, you know, everybody else, you know, was basically doing some sort of you know, competing with everybody else. But this private label space is, you know, definitely growing exponentially. And I think that just some of these, you know, some of these software companies are just not focused on, you know, on this idea, because they're just not sellers themselves. And I think ultimately that's where the best, you know, the best product that we see on the market, this probably goes across from really my days in retail, whether it was a, you know, a retail POS software that we would use. You know, when you're buying software from people that are in business, is always very different. And you can tell right away when, you know, someone is a software writer or someone's a business person. Then, you know, we're definitely business people first, and, you know, software providers second. And there just don't seem to be a lot of those out there.
Right. So you mentioned a couple of things that I kind of want to pick up on. Because of that background on retail is so fascinating to me in that capacity. Where do you think retail either misstepped or continues to misstep and not be successful at, you know, innovating with the times, or and where do you think that there's still a great like advantage over selling on e-commerce as opposed to, or selling on retail versus e-commerce? Do you have kind of any insight to that?
So you're saying as a brick and mortar as opposed to e-commerce, saying like,
right.
What the advantages of brick and mortar over e-commerce?
Yeah, absolutely. What are you still seeing as advantages on brick and mortar over e-commerce?
Here's probably one of the most, like, which, you know, in our space, in our world, we think the world is about e-commerce and Amazon, and like that's the whole planet. And in reality, it still makes up about, you know, 12% or 13% of overall sales. So you have 87% of the planet is still buying their product from a physical retailer. I mean, it's phenomenal news for, you know, us on the e-commerce side of there's not much room left to grow, but there is also the, you know, there has to be this understanding that people still need to, you know, especially now, they have to go somewhere. There's literally nowhere else to go other than shop, because everything else is closed. So, you know, retailers right now still, you know, that are doing it the right way are still able to give you an experience where you can, you know, walk into a physical locations, go do something with your family and, you know, and whatnot, and present product in, you know, in the, you know, should I say the good old fashioned way? it still exists. It's still a ton of the market share, and e-commerce is going to chip away and continue to chip away, and it'll probably double over the next couple of years. With the pandemic, and the rate of change has definitely been accelerated by that. But if it doubles, there's still going to be 75% of the world. They're still going to be making their purchases at a retail store. So I feel like you can't lose sight of that in any business that you're getting into.
Do you and your team, do you guys still think about, or do you guys sell in any retail stores with your goods, or your brand sells in to retail stores directly?
So I'm going to say almost all of the brands that we represent are creating the product for physical retailers, and we are tagging on to those orders for e-commerce. So in order to actually make those minimum order quantities and to test product, that is really the best combination of a way to do things. It's it's not necessarily easy for the little guy. The bigger guys have a tremendous advantage. If they're actually selling product into a Walmart or a TJ Maxx or wherever they're selling, they're able to create a line of 50 different styles or 50 different products that are going on a shelf, and just throw it on on Amazon or their own website or wherever they're putting it. And if it doesn't work, it's not that big of a deal, because they have a place to ultimately close it out. It definitely is much more challenging when you are trying to bring in something only for e-commerce. If you don't have a plan B, your likelihood for getting hurt is way higher. And that's usually one of the first things that I tell anybody who's getting involved is, what's plan B? Because plan A may not work. And if you have 10 products that you're going for, you're lucky if 3 or 4 of them work. But if you have a plan B for the other 6, and then you can really grow those 4, you should be able to make a lot of money. But if you don't have a plan B, people get gun shy, they lose money quickly, and the whole thing falls apart. So that is it's still an important piece to e-commerce, is having a physical retail option.
Yeah, and I've been posting on social media a little bit more. Like, again, if you have questions, guys, go ahead and comment into LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're watching this. We're even on Twitter, on Periscope, where people are still consuming Periscope. So we appreciate our audiences on those platforms. Go ahead and submit those as you can, and we'll go ahead and tag Jason if it's after the fact. Obviously, this is live for only a short amount of time. It's Friday. People are really trying to relax a little bit after this crazy week. It feels like a year. So we'll make sure that Jason and his team can answer questions and tag them if you go ahead and post on comments later on after the show. But kind of where I was going with this, Jason, was, or my next thought process was, with 2020 kind of being so hectic and there's so much going on, what was something that you as a team what's something that surprised you? Let's just start with there.
What didn't surprise us about 2020?
What surprised you the most that you didn't think would happen? Let's take out the whole, obviously, global pandemic and whatnot. Let's talk about just like e-commerce. What surprised you the most, apart from like growth, and was there just diversification? I think when we were maybe I'll help serve this up a different way. Let me ask this question. We are seeing more and more sellers and more influencers and people who come on the show. They're talking about diversify. And the reason why they're saying that, and they're hammering that home in early 2021, is because what happened in early 2020. And that's because when a pandemic hit or something global kind of happens and they shut down and they won't accept your inventory, or logistics are a nightmare, and there's just this groundswell of all this inventory, levels kind of shift in sellers themselves. They don't know how much to send to Amazon. They don't know how to plan moving forward. Is that kind of why you mentioned this in your last answer? Is that why you're telling a lot of people more to diversify, hey, be on different kind of branded sites, be on different marketplaces? Is that what you were alluding to?
I guess part of the 2020 surprise was definitely, I think, logistics, and across the board, from what started off in March and April, as everyone thought they had more inventory than they were ever going to need because the world was ending. People were slashing prices, wholesalers were slashing prices, and it was this big panic. It seemed like by June and July, all of a sudden, China was shut down, other factories across the country were hit with COVID, and everybody wished they had the merchandise that they closed out in April and May. And getting product back from overseas became very challenging. So, I do think that at this point, it seems like the world is still, starting to straighten out a little bit, at least as far as logistics. It seems like, people have balanced that wave of craziness. It seems to have, definitely balanced where you can get product. As far as, diversification, it really depends on, your inventory levels, and you really have to have enough inventory to support multiple marketplaces. And, if you can, then that's always recommended. But I'm definitely, websites are expensive, different marketplaces, cause different challenges. And you definitely you need to have the inventory levels to support, all the efforts that you're putting in. I really think that was one of the biggest things that I did see in 2020 was people that were, spread thin across different, marketplaces, and ultimately didn't have the inventory that they needed. And, had they just focused on one, they probably would have been, way more profitable than if they were, not necessarily, spreading everything all over the place. But, now once inventory hopefully becomes a little bit more readily available, diversification at that point is definitely, it's always wise to be diversified. It's always safer to be diversified. It's just, you make sure you have your ducks in a row as far as inventory, because that really is the name of the game. Like if you don't have your logistics straightened out and you don't have your inventory straightened out, there's, no point in, spending time to be on 12 websites if you can't support one.
Exactly. You sounded like my financial advisor when you were talking about diversify. So that's how you do it, to spread the wealth amongst everything. So everything growth, that's what I instantly thought of. So that's where I'm at today on Friday. Look at me.
Yeah. But you only have $10. How much are you going to diversify?
Exactly. So you have to be profitable and secure in one facet. That's when diversification happens. Very cool. We actually had a comment come through. Brennan Girdler, actually, person who comments a lot of this. I think he has a lot of good insights as well. But his question, maybe comment, if you will, is brick and mortar people that adapt. That's great, obviously, especially nowadays. What about the fact that 50% of sales are via third parties? Those aren't little guys. I'm gonna kind of like edit that and kind of and tweak it a little bit. With brick and mortar people kind of adapting and having to see that they have to diversify on Amazon or on e-commerce. What are your tips that you're suggesting people get started? Is it get listed on Amazon? Like what are those first initial steps that you're trying to help sellers that are brick and mortar onto Amazon, if you do work with those kinds of clients?
I definitely. So I would definitely say Amazon is really the first place you should start. How to get your product listed on Amazon is definitely, there's so many different service providers that can help you to do that. And I would definitely, say try and get somebody who already has, done it to help you start the process. You can ultimately take over yourself once you sort of learn it. But that learning curve from experienced, service providers or solution providers is definitely very valuable. Again, you don't have to stay with them forever. There are a lot of, a la carte solution providers that can create listings for you, do listing optimization, and, do things like that to help you get off the ground to a point where you are now, have a running business, and see if it makes sense to bring someone in-house to manage your own business at that point. Because you have already, you've seen at least, some revenue stream. I'd also say that I think that people that try and start on their, on multiple platforms at the same time, I think is also can be, a challenge and sometimes a mistake. Generally Amazon does about, let's say 80% better than most other, places. And, building traffic on your own site will probably also take a solid, 3 to 6 months until you actually have a customer list at all. So you usually want to try and, start with Amazon and then build everything else up sort of around it. Ultimately, we do have accounts that have, managed to bring their website business to be, par or even better than their Amazon sales. But, those companies started on Amazon and then grew their, e-commerce business around it, with Walmart.com and Sears and all those other, websites. But, Amazon always seems to be, start off as number one and is the fastest way to do direct to consumer business. And, once you're doing direct to consumer business, you can then figure out all the other marketplaces that, definitely cost, a lot of money. And I would say, don't fool yourself into thinking that, because Amazon's fees are expensive, that, there aren't fees on other sites. Because if you're doing it yourself, then you have to pay Facebook or Google that same amount of money to get traffic. So you're giving the money to someone. It's just, Amazon is, right now is still, number one by far. And you should really make that the, the basis of your e-commerce business, I would say.
Absolutely. And as an international company from Ping Pong's side, we thrive in that similar vein, is having to like take all those fees and help people save money. But I'm going to take that question, kind of pivot, or that comment and pivot with kind of maybe more international growth. I think a lot of people, they start in Amazon.com. Obviously, if you're being successful and you're like, hey, I want to take this to the next level, their initial thought is, I want to diversify, or I want to go on a different platform, not Amazon. But a lot of people don't understand that there's other marketplaces out there in different countries. Their kind of hesitation from what we see is that it's just too hard, it's too difficult to kind of diversify in that capacity. I don't want to translate my listing. I don't want to have to figure out a whole nother logistics chain. When you're talking to your clients or customers, or you yourself as sellers, where are you initially looking at for growth opportunity, especially like now when other marketplaces are starting to catch up? Obviously, .com is the most saturated. I would say saturated, but there's a lot of buying power in the United States. Where is that next market that you as a team, or that you are seeing, is kind of that next market, that budding market, if you will?
So Amazon themselves really pushes, and we get emails from Amazon reps. It seems like almost every other day of there's Amazon UK, Amazon Europe, Amazon Brazil. They really are pushing it and trying to make it much easier to to actually do business overseas. And there's actually companies that someone that's in the co-op with us, Yana Precious, that does a lot of translations to make that part of it easier if you're going to list your product in other marketplaces. And something that when we tried to do it, we tried to sell DVDs, this is like 7 years ago in Canada, it was a nightmare. Like, we literally had to ship product, over the border ourselves into the Canadian Prime facilities and do all that in order to sell product in Canada. And like now, Amazon will just ship it from your US facility to marketplaces in Canada and Germany and Europe and in all of these different places. And they have, really, really made it much easier to do business overseas, where it just wasn't, it was a nightmare previously. You literally had to open a bank account. We had a cousin open a bank account in Canada so we could have a business in Canada so we could sell product there. Like, all those hurdles have really been, solved by Amazon, because ultimately, they want to take over the world and whatnot. But, they really are looking at the global marketplace and trying to make it, easier for Amazon.com sellers to sell everywhere.
Absolutely. And that's a cool segue too, when you're having trouble selling internationally, and instead of obviously opening bank accounts internationally, that's where Ping Pong comes in. Quick shout out to our company, Ping Pong. If you're looking to sell internationally and save money, go ahead and click those links below in these comments too. Find out more information about how to grow and receive and send money. But that's my quick little advertisement. Look at me. I'm gonna lay into our sponsored by company, what we do the best. So a couple of questions from that. Shout out to Yana, who's a friend of the friend of the show. She had a great talk about us about growing internationally and international listings. So go and check that on our YouTube page as well. But you had mentioned selling into Canadian market. Kind of a weird question, maybe. You were selling DVDs there. What was your number one seller in the Canadian market in terms of movies?
The Quiet Man. Yeah, The Quiet Man
Okay.
with John Wayne was. It just seemed like these older movies had like just an infinite, like, it's crazy. There was no end to the amount of Quiet Man DVDs that we were able to sell. And
Really?
we were selling Quiet Man on Blu-ray. Oh, it blew my mind. Like what? There's some 90-year-old person there that wants to watch John Wayne on Blu-ray, no less. But that was in Canada, somewhere in Saskatoon or whatever.
What year was this?
This was not that long ago, believe it or not. We're talking about all of 5-6 years ago, where it was still just like.
Are you so? And that's my other question. Are you guys still selling DVDs and other products like that internationally? If you're allowed to.
We are. Believe it or not, we still are. It's my warehouse used to be 90% full of DVDs. Now we have whatever's left that we still do is about 5% in the corner. And it's like one of these days we're gonna stop. But it's just like, if it still sells, we still have product. I can't help it. We just it's old habits die hard. We're still selling.
Well, that gives me like kind of a curious question, and maybe a question for the audience. If you have questions about maybe if you're listening right now, what's your favorite product, or kind of the one product that you sold on Amazon that you still just won't give up because it's kind of nostalgic, or it's just one of those things that's still doing well, that's kind of bizarre? Go ahead and put those in the comments below, or share with us after you listen to this via audio form. But my question to you is, how do you go about selling? Because I feel like if I were to sell anything that's produced by like with a license or anything like that, how do you go about those relationships? And is there anything specific when you're selling DVDs or kind of like copyrighted, goods like that? When there's brands involved, there's like associations involved. How does that work as a third party seller?
Yeah, you have to make sure that the company that you're buying it from is really okay with you, selling the product on Amazon. That is, and very often, these companies don't, have no desire to do it themselves. They're wholesalers. They don't really get retail or care about retail. If you're willing to purchase product from them, and take on that risk and do what you need to do in order to sell it, with Amazon, you need to make sure that you're, purchasing it from somebody that knows what you're actually doing. Because you can definitely run into a problem where, if you're trying to, in theory, buy the Quiet Man, not from, Olive Distribution, who's the rights holder, and, you buy it and tell them that you're selling it in your retail store and it shows up on Amazon, they can send you cease and desist, they can give you problems, and, you want to be upfront at the end of the day with the people that you're buying products from. I feel like if you're trying to, there are plenty of people that are happy to sell your product if you're going to sell it on Amazon. And if they're not, it's usually going to be a recipe for a problem at some point down the line. And, we try and stay as straight as we can. And, if you're not honest with the people you're buying product from, it's going to be a problem.
How do you find out distribution places like that? Like, where do you start your education, or how do you find these places? That's a tough one. That was like
that's
a dark rabbit hole to go down in Google.
It's we really, I guess what I like to usually say is that you have to have an excuse for why you think you are either buying a higher quality product or have a better price. And if you're kind of just like everybody else, and if you found someone on Google or whatnot, or they're advertising all over the place to sell something, then you really have to ask yourself, like, what am I going to do that's different, that's going to actually make this, sell? Where you need to have a reason to make money. And if you have a unique relationship with somebody, then that might be the reason why you're able to buy product from them. Like for us in the DVD world, we were selling at retail, and we had 3 stores. So we'd established relationships with these vendors over the course of many, many years, where they trusted that, if they sold us product, they knew where it was going to land. If it was going to be at retail, if it was going to be at wholesale, if it was going to be, online. So there was a reason why they knew us, and there was a reason why we knew we were getting better pricing, or better product, or whatever the case is. But if you feel like, if you're just buying it for $3 and everybody else can buy it for $3, it's a tough place to try and really sink your money into and think you're going to make money.
Especially with margins. I can't imagine what like the margin, percentages or the kind of levels are with DVDs and whatnot. So that's fascinating. Like, didn't think we'd be getting into a DVD talk, but I'm a big movie person. So when you talk about that, I'm all about it, learning more. What's your one product that you regret selling on Amazon? Do you have one?
Yeah.
Do you have one? Can you share with us?
I'll give you this story.
Let's go.
So we got into, it was a good lesson learned. We got into a pregnancy protein powder where, as a doctor, it seemed like he really, was super passionate about the product. It's healthy, it's organic, it's, all of these buzzwords for pregnant women. I was like, how it seems so great. He spent millions of dollars in FDA studies to prove how this was the greatest and healthiest product, on the market for pregnant women. And, what could go wrong? Guess what went wrong? We forgot to actually taste the powder. Apparently, after listing it for 6 months, turns out it tasted terrible. Oops.
Oh boy.
And if something tastes terrible, doesn't matter how healthy it is. We were ultimately selling, food at the end of the day. We were selling a protein shake, and it didn't taste good. And after that, we learned the lesson of anything that we touch or sell, I must touch it, feel it, own it, and make sure I know what it is. Whether it's, clothing or a pair of headphones or, I have to know what it is and make sure that it works and is, either tastes good, feel good, the right quality before we'll throw it out there. Because at the end of the day, if the product isn't actually good, then doesn't matter. Nothing else matters at the end of the day. You have to have a quality product, and we learned that the hard way. We spent a lot of money on that protein powder trying to figure out why we couldn't get this thing to work, and that was a pretty obvious answer that we learned the hard way. Oh.
Yeah. Are you in your team still launching new products and brands online, or are you managing other people's?
We are. I always say we do very little of that, new things ourselves. We really are focused at this point on, software and other, I guess we always say that we're not taking on any new clients at this point.
Sure.
And there will always be that one person, a year that I'll say, like we have this one crazy brand that we want to, do, and then I'll say, all right, we have to make the time. But in general, we really are, we really see that we're launching new products for our current brands all the time. That is our, business model. And, launch is, if you're on Amazon, you have to know how to launch products. And like, that's really, we're launching stuff all day. We're just not necessarily, we try and launch in our wheelhouse, I guess. We haven't really, we're able to focus on that and still be okay.
Absolutely. And I threw it up on the screen too. If you're watching this or even listening, question for your audience, maybe leave it in the comments on if you're listening on Spotify or you're listening on Apple Podcasts. What's the one, product you regret selling? Maybe share a story. If you have time, we'd love to hear about that. And share the pregnancy protein powder. Never knew such a product existed, but that's why we have Amazon, to always find those micro niches, all right?
Yeah, find and bury. That's what we did.
Exactly. What's the most surprising product that you've not tell us exactly what it is? What's the most surprising product that exceeded your expectations on Amazon or selling?
Yeah, honestly, that one's a tough one because I have too much. We sign NDAs and confidentiality agreements with everybody that we deal with.
So what? Okay, let me back it up a little bit. I'm not going to get anyone in trouble here because, you know, our podcast is listened by millions of people around the world. So we're not going to get anyone. I'm just kidding. Hopefully one day. But without it getting in trouble, what is the one category that time and time again that you guys saw on Amazon surprise you in a good way?
I guess I would say that it seems like the fitness category, you know, really, especially over the course of the last couple of years, seems to be something that doesn't seem to end. Like, I'm just amazed at the amount of, because a lot of these items don't seem like they should be, you know, they're heavy. They don't seem like they're, you know, e-commerce friendly. They're funny shapes and sizes, but people like, I think this, you know, even before the pandemic, I think a lot of people prefer to work out at home over going to the gym. So the fitness category in general, and, you know, I would also say that the spike from December to January is always fun, just to see that you get 2 Christmases in the fitness category where, you know, it's December is one, and then everybody in January decides that they want to get fit and healthy, and you have another whole round in January. So that's always sort of, you know, fun to watch. And then it's summertime, and then everybody wants to get in shape again, and then that's, you know, so there's all these spikes in that category that just always continue to surprise, because we kind of have our graph of all of our businesses, and that category always has its own graph that just is not related to the rest of the business.
Do you feel like using that kind of like cyclical selling cycle, that you guys are able to load that into like your software tool? Maybe we're coming full circle here before the top of the hour, but when you're kind of like looking at those trends and graphs, do you see it very much similarly mirror like your product velocity, and then obviously like with seasons a lot, and then that's where the pricing kind of like levels out? Can you guys almost predict that now?
Yes, at this point, yes. And things definitely change, and, you know, the software reacts to the changes in the marketplace. But we have settings which you can load that your items are in peak season. And, you know, when you set things to peak season, it's more volatile, moves faster, because you know that these items, you know, could be a Valentine's Day item, it could be a Christmas item, a Mother's Day item. You know, there's different peak seasons for different categories. And, you know, once you tell the software that you're in peak season, and it's going to react, you know, faster, because it knows that this is a specific, hot time for that literally specific ASIN. So that, you know, we definitely same kind of thing, learned that through trial and error, where, you know, we were running the algorithm, and then, you know, it hit peak season. And, you know, we originally had only December set as peak season. And then you start with different products, and you see that, you know what, peak season is not only in December. There's peak season for different products all over the place. So we needed to change the algorithm and let you choose peak season on an item level, because it really changes for every item. So we've definitely gone through those trials and tribulations of sort of realizing, you know, where the algorithm was failing over the years, to kind of update it and allow it to really be tailor-made to each specific item.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I mean that's really interesting and fascinating. I thank you so much for jumping on today, Jason. I think that learning that there is obviously tools out there that can help you and assist you, obviously maximize your revenue, which I think is a no-brainer, but they can see in real time with tools like this, there's so many different things. If you're big enough, you can start to maximize that kind of formula, if you will. Like, analytics is just a huge key in Amazon and as sellers. So you want that data to work in your favor and not be guessing along the point. I think that's what my main takeaway is today, is use tools to help assist you with these, like, instead of guessing and maybe making the wrong business decision, utilize tools like this to really enhance like your growth opportunity and your revenue, revenue growth. For people who want to learn more information about you, or they're just questions and they're like, hey, this is really great in theory, I have a question about this or about the software, where can they learn more information about you or the company?
Sure. You can go to azsellerkit.com. You can email us at info@azsellerkit.com, or you can email me directly at my agency email is jason@mmxdist.com. And whatever, happy to hear and talk to, anybody. I can talk about this stuff for forever. So this is fun.
It's super laid back here on Friday. Like I said, here it's really like, I don't know what it's like. You're in New York, correct?
Yeah, I'm in Jersey. So
Jersey. Sorry, we won't get in that whole turf battle, but yeah, Jersey part. Yeah, here in Indiana, I don't think I've seen the sun for a solid week. So, it's that time of year. I know in New York and New Jersey, it's similar seasons, man. You got to love it. It's a depressing time of year when there's no sun out all the day. But yeah, no, hey, it was super great of you to come on. I know I learned a lot today about just that process, your education. And now that we've gone through a show, I call all my guests friends of the show. So you're more than welcome to hop on if you see something in the industry. I know we're working on a couple of cool projects together with the eCom Cooperative here up and coming March. There's a lot of great buzz around, what's coming up in 2021. I think a lot of people's mentality is optimism in this year, and I think that's another keyword. So thanks so much for hopping on with us today. Do you have anything else before we hop off and to the audience?
No, I guess just the last thing is just make sure you're always finding if you're blessed enough to have a product that's selling on Amazon, make sure you're selling it for the right price. And that's really it.
Great takeaway.
Without software, just however, make sure you're selling your product for the right price.
Do your research and then make sure, you're not shooting yourself in the foot. That's a great takeaway. So for Jason and for Jason with AZ Seller Kit, I'm Ryan Kramer again. Thanks for joining us this week, guys, live on Crossover Commerce with Ping Pong Payments. The show goes live, but then we also release all of our episodes on, again, they go live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter, but you can watch them again on all those platforms. Again, I would say subscribe to YouTube, subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. We're going to be live. We're doing 4 more episodes next week. I'm super excited about all of our guests that will start to be promoted on all of our social channels. So make sure you tune in live and save those. If you can't do it live, go back, watch them again, take notes, ask us questions, and tag us in your social posts. If you have questions or if you want to hear from specific individuals, also tag me and shoot us a note. But for this week in Crossover Commerce, I'm Ryan Kramer. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.